With the remake just around the corner, I decided to take a look at Super Mario RPG's soundtrack and found the game's battle themes to be really interesting. Different themes will accompany your various battles depending on how difficult the enemy is, and these themes are all tied together by building on the same ideas. These ideas aren't melodic motifs or chord progressions, though the music instead develops rhythmically. The music theory of rhythm is never going to get as big an audience as, say, leitmotifs, but it's arguably the most important part of making a piece of music recognizable. Let's look through these battle themes and see how the rhythm informs their development. The Fight Against Monsters theme that accompanies regular battles against small enemies almost sounds more like a party theme than a battle theme. I guess these battles are a lot more fun for Mario than they are for the creatures he's stomping on. These upbeat, danceable vibes are driven by the piece's rhythm. The entire piece follows this looping one-bar rhythmic pattern, 2 downbeats followed by 3 syncopated 16th note upbeats, resolving to 2 8th notes on beat 4 that lead back to our downbeat on beat 1 of the next bar. I went more in depth into this idea a couple years ago in this video, but in general, you can think of notes that land on the beat as being rhythmically consonant, whereas offbeats create some rhythmic tension. Using these offbeats to create tension and then land back on the beat creates an endlessly satisfying cycle of tension and resolution. Even just by itself, you can feel how energetic and lively this rhythm is. Every instrument follows this rhythm, from the bass line to the melody to the background guitar and synth figures. There are no cross rhythms, no rhythmic layering unless you count it against the 4-on-the-floor drum beat. There are only 2 bars where the melody breaks away from this pattern to deliver a simple 8th note walk between the root and 5th. The melody and harmony are both super basic, sitting on our tonic E major chord throughout and basically running up and down the E major scale. There's really nothing to distract from the good time vibes provided by this rhythmic engine. The Fight Against a Somewhat Stronger Monster theme once again bases itself around this looping rhythm, but pushes it a bit by decorating the first 2 downbeats with more 16th note syncopation. It's just 2 extra notes, but taking away that full quarter note on beat 1 removes a pillar of stability and makes this track sound a lot more busy and complicated than the previous one. The extra intensity is emphasized by the rhythmically and harmonically confusing introduction, featuring parallel diminished chord runs a perfect 4th apart for a very jarring effect. The melody and harmony are still pretty straightforward, but do crank up the intensity compared to the previous track. The melody runs up and down an A Dorian scale, and the harmony shifts chromatically between an A minor chord and an A flat chord. I love the way the melody leaps to blurt out these crunchy semitones in the answering figures, still keeping to the basic rhythmic foundation. This time, rather than following the exact same pattern as the melody, the bass line takes on a simpler figure on the root, but notice how it still captures the important notes of the bar. We get a strong downbeat on 1, then we anticipate beat 3 by a 16th note, and then we land with a strong downbeat on beat 4. The bass line isn't spelling out every note of the piece's main rhythmic motif, but outlining the structurally important notes to reinforce it in a subtler way. We see this exact same technique used in the following section that bounces between G and A flat chords. The low brass melody leaves out a bunch of notes from the main rhythmic idea, but still totally fits in line with it, and the parts of the rhythm that make it identifiable are kept intact. The strong downbeat on beat 1 and the syncopated figure anticipating beat 3. This brings in rhythmic variety in a way that doesn't destroy the vibe created by the main underlying rhythm. The following melodic phrase returns to almost the exact original rhythmic idea, but with a completely new contour and completely different notes from before, resolving down to this D whole note. It's funny how the notes and contour of two melodies can be so drastically different, but because the rhythms are almost identical, they completely flow together. The final run sees a slight variation on our rhythmic motif, replacing the two eighth notes on beat 4 that led back into beat 1 with a dotted eighth note anticipation, creating a symmetry between beats 2 and 4. This figure is transposed up in whole steps from G minor to A minor to B7, building up intensity as the drums kick into double time to drive us toward the finish line. The final statement takes this melody up the D flat whole tone scale, losing our sense of key and floating away from tonality until it runs smoothly up to an E, the 5 chord that sets up a return back to A minor where we started. The whole tone scale is a great way to throw everything up in the air and make the listener question if they'll ever find solid ground again, without being overly crunchy or dissonant. The fight against an armed boss theme is built around this repeating pattern known as the habanera rhythm, a Cuban dance rhythm which brings the super energetic, bouncy feeling to the music. Once again, we're riding the line between a battle theme and a dance party, but check out how this rhythm relates to the battle theme. The earlier ostinatos, that's pretentious for a looping rhythmic figure, gave us a strong downbeat, threw some offbeat syncopation at us, and then gave us two eighth notes that resolved to the following strong downbeat. The two eighth notes on beat 4 leading into a strong beat 1 are what made these rhythms feel satisfying and infinitely loopable. You could throw pretty much anything in between these beats and it would still work. The boss theme's rhythm squishes this formula into a pattern half the length, giving us a strong downbeat, two eighth notes leading into the next one, and 1/16th note in between these two to create that bounce. The rhythm is expressed primarily through this prominent bass figure, which starts on the root, dips down to the sharp 4th, and resolves up to the 5th. The sharp 4th landing on beat 2 gives it a lot of weight, and using a sharp 4 to 5 move in a minor key like this always gives the music a kind of mischievous quality. It feels a bit like we're in a scary carnival or something. This pattern runs through the entire piece, and the melody extrapolates on the idea on top. The bass figure is played, and then stretched out into a longer phrase that structurally outlines a simple walk down the C minor scale from the root to the 5th. It's very different to the previous battle themes in a lot of ways, but the structural ideas of scale-based melody over top of syncopated looping rhythm is maintained. The bounciness of the rhythm lends that great upbeat Mario quality to the music, with the intensity desired for a boss battle added in with the chromatic melody and jagged harmony. The final boss theme, Fight Against Smithy, is a direct development of the regular boss theme. We start with this slower organ statement of the boss theme melody before the groove kicks in with this bass line, taking the boss battle figure and stretching it out into a 4-beat pattern by tacking on more embellishments of the 5th. This bass line becomes the de facto melody of the piece, as a variety of dissonant organ chords float over top without adding any real melodic material. There's a good mix of lightheartedness and dissonance even in this final boss theme. The sharp 4 to 5 moves in the bass line carry on the same kind of haunted carnival quality we heard before, but the use of B7 chords sprinkled throughout adds in the lighter tone of the raised 6th scale degree, D sharp. The 16th note organ line that closes out the loop features a very Baroque sounding move from F sharp minor to C sharp 7, throwing in a much darker Castlevania type of vibe. Altogether, it's an appropriately chaotic sounding track. When Smithy enters his final form, the music takes on a whole different approach. Instead of the bouncy, danceable club rhythms we've been building on up until now, the tempo is cranked up, the drums take on a drum and bass type beat, and the bass line establishes a new, syncopated figure that runs through most of the piece. Almost the entire piece is based on the whole tone scale, which, as we heard earlier, snatches away the listener's footing with no point of resolution. This makes the whole piece sound untethered, and these wailing chords that come in over top the bass and drums all use some dissonant combination of notes from the D-flat whole tone scale to keep us in this anxious place, perfect for the final push against the final boss. This figure that plays here in the guitar is the only melodic statement used throughout the boss theme, and while this might be a stretch, I think it ties this theme to the other battle themes in a subtle way. It shows up more prominently later in the piece. We have these syncopated full band hits laying out a move back and forth between B-flat and A-flat augmented chords derived from the B-flat whole tone scale. And you'll notice that the reckless syncopation of this figure is anchored down with these two eighth notes on beat 4 of the bar, which lead into the downbeat of the following bar. A familiar rhythmic structure whose practicality has been proven by this point in the video, I'm sure. After this riff is set up, we bring back that earlier melodic figure over top, and if we just look at the rhythm of this melody, we see three things: strong downbeat at the start, offbeat syncopation in the middle, and two quarter notes at the end leading into the next downbeat. That's right, it's slowed down to half speed, but this is the same rhythmic formula that each battle theme has been building off of this whole time. Compare this isolated melody to the melody from the Fight Against a Somewhat Stronger Monster theme, slowed down to half speed. Rather than running up a scale, we're hopping around notes of the whole tone scale, which gives a much more chaotic quality to the melody, especially floating over top of these rabid 16th note syncopations, but the rhythmic similarities cannot be denied. Maintaining the formula of strong bassline heavy pieces that mostly stick to one chord and use simple melodic ideas keeps these battle themes focused on the rhythm, and allows us to see the rhythmic development that carries from the earliest battles of the game all the way to the final boss. Melodic motifs are cool, but rhythmic motifs used like this give an even greater sense of cohesion throughout a score, one that we feel more than we actually hear. RPGs are known for grand, sweeping, emotional scores to match the scale of their worlds and plots, and writing something appropriate for the genre that still captures the goofy and lighthearted sound of Mario as a franchise and character is no easy feat. But focusing on upbeat, danceable rhythms seems to have done the trick beautifully. I'm super excited to see how the remake handles this music. If you like this video and you want to support the channel, please consider checking out my Patreon. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.